Wheeling Plan Commission meeting for Thursday, July 17th is called to order. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Secretary, would you please take the roll?
Commissioner Johnson, I am here. Commissioner Powers.
Here.
Commissioner Stylen.
Here.
Commissioner Vito is running late due to traffic. He will be here shortly. Commissioners Dorband and Zangara are absent with prior notice, and Chairman Rafato.
Here. Mr. Jennings, any changes to the agenda?
We do have a couple of changes. The item from consent, the freestanding sign for Decker Restaurant, we had a request to remove that item from consent for the purpose of discussing the landscape plan. The architect confirmed that he would be available. He must also be stuck on Dundee Road right now, so I would suggest that we come back to that one at the end.
Great, thank you. Citizens' concerns and comments. At this time, anyone wishing to make a comment or have a concern about anything other than what's on the agenda, please come forward. Nope. Consent items. Docket number SCBA 1420 Strom Deli, 411 East Dundee Road, appearance approval of a wall sign. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Secretary.
Motion was made by Commissioner Johnson. I say yes. Seconded by Commissioner Powers.
Yes.
Commissioner Stylen.
Yes.
And Chairman Rafato.
Yes. Okay, we're going to move SCBA 14-19 to second one, so then calling docket number 2014-13, Russian School of Mathematics, 125 North Milwaukee Avenue, special use site plan approval for a recreation and instruction facility. Mr. Secretary.
Docket number 2014-13, Ilya Rifkin, manager of Russian School of Mathematics, tenant, is seeking special use site plan approval as required under Chapter 19-06 Commercial Districts, Section 19.06.040B3 General Commercial and Office District, Chapter 19-10 Use Regulations, and Chapter 19-12 Site Plan Approval Requirements, and associated sections to establish a recreation and instruction facility at 125 North Milwaukee Avenue, Wheeling, Illinois. Standards for a special use. A zoning special use as defined in Title 19 of the Village of Wheeling zoning is a use of a parcel of land that requires review and consideration before approval due to circumstances or effects on the surrounding properties that may adversely affect them. In order to be considered for a special use, the petitioner is required to demonstrate through testimony to the Plan Commission at the public hearing why their request meets the conditions of the Village Code, including but not limited to how the proposed use will not damage the enjoyment or use of the surrounding properties. Prior to the public hearing, the petitioner provides written statements meant to show that their request for a special use meets the standards established in Title 19. The Commission chairperson will typically direct that these statements be entered into the record without a full reading of them at the hearing. Based upon the testimony and supporting materials submitted, the Plan Commission will make findings in support of or against the petitioner's testimony and report those findings to the Village Board. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Jennings.
The comments of the Fire Department and Planning Division are included in your staff report this week. We do have a couple of issues that we've been working with the petitioner on over the course of the last week since those comments were distributed. What we would anticipate tonight is an opening of this hearing, go through the various issues, allow the petitioner to present the business. Then following that discussion, we can go through some of the staff comments, and if it's appropriate to continue the discussion to a future date, we can discuss the amount of work that must be done and pick a date at that point. But at this point, what I'd like to do is go ahead and have the petitioner go through the presentation and take public comments and go to commissioner questions.
Great, thank you very much. Good evening, sir. Will you be the only one speaking tonight on this matter?
I believe so.
Yes, okay. If you can raise your hand, right hand. Do you swear the testimony you give tonight to be the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. If you could give your name and business address to our secretary, that would be great.
Sure. Ilya, I-L-Y-A. Rifkin, R-I-F as in Frank, K-I-N. Our address is, headquarters is 200 Wells Avenue, Newton, Massachusetts, 02459.
Floor is yours for the presentation.
Okay. Sorry, I may be somewhat underprepared.
What we have for you are a couple of slides. We have a photograph, we have an overall site plan, and we have the conceptual floor plan. So what I would suggest is just start with a little bit of the background of the business, how many locations you have, generally speaking, what the business does, and then we can open it up to questions from the commissioners.
Sure. I'll very quickly run through who we are and what we're about. We started about in 1997, about 18 years ago. We were formed essentially by the Boston emigre community as a resource to parents who wanted additional training for their kids in mathematics. So we were formed in Newton by a couple of families that came together to create a math curriculum that would add on to what we were seeing in public school. My family was one of the families that created it, and RSM has basically grown as a family business since that point. Over the last 17 years, we've opened about 20 locations. The one we're applying for is our 20th in Wheeling. We have about 11,000 students across 6 states. Our goal has always been the same. We've focused on elementary and middle school education, offering an enrichment program focused on abstract learning, deep understanding. So we don't focus on memorization or drills. We try to create a deep understanding of mathematics at an early age, understanding and appreciation for mathematics. We're entirely class-based, so all of our lessons are for 1.5 hours, all the way up to 2 hours, once a week. On average, our class sizes tend to range between 8 and 14 students. Average class size about 12. Our locations range throughout the gamut, so we have locations that are about 200 students all the way to our headquarters, which is about 2,000 students. We've chosen, about when I came in 5 years ago, not to franchise the business because our focus was much more on quality than it was on growth. As a result, we've basically grown entirely by word of mouth, but also by basically reinvesting. So we open about 3 or 4 locations a year as we find great people. So our director for the location, RSM Wheeling, will be Anya, who's a native of Northbrook, a neighboring city. We generally open in neighborhoods with the best public schools, because that's where parents who are concerned about math education generally reside. And we see benefits from our program about a year or 2 out. Most families stay with us about 5 or 6 years. Our program is, it's a K through 10 program that basically takes kids from the beginning all the way to the top level tests. So it's fully accredited in a number of states, including California, where we have a sizable presence. We're working on getting accredited in Illinois, but it's Common Core aligned. That's basically who we are in terms of, in Illinois, we opened in Naperville about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. We have a small location there, about 100 students. And we've had demand from the Wheeling and sort of neighboring areas, Buffalo Grove and Northbrook and Wheeling. For us, it's kind of one big, you have excellent schools sort of in this triangle and very devoted parents. We've had requests from that area for a long time. It took us a while to find a principal that we felt confident in. We've been training Anya for about a year. Our original intent, as you'll see on our website, was to open in Buffalo Grove. That's where we understood that was kind of the community I identified. Anya and a lot of the parents pulled us towards Wheeling, and we fell in love with the plaza in Milwaukee, primarily because we see it as an ideal fit. It's not very active. There's not a lot of traffic. Well, there's a lot of traffic on that road, but that plaza has, it allows kids to, easy drop-off. We'll need to figure out turnarounds and such, but it's much larger than a typical presence we start off with. We start off with about 1,000 or 1,500 square feet. The challenge there is that we feel very confident in this area, so Anya has sort of pushed us towards a larger presence, and I think that has created questions from, how does that work? What is the traffic flow? Generally, cities have more time to get used to us before we expand, so that's, I think, one of the challenges. But our goal across all of our branches, we've never closed a branch. Our goal is to be deeply rooted in the community. So we try to find principals that are very connected. Their kids have gone through the public school systems. They know what the public school system does well, where they need help, because that's where parents come to us and they say, okay, this is what, most of our parents attend public schools. We've got very few who are going through private schools. We have, and we offer the enrichment in addition to the public schools. Every neighborhood is a little different in terms of what we emphasize, but our curriculum is consistent throughout. That's just a little bit about us.
The floor plan is up. Would it
Yep.
be appropriate to talk about that?
Yes.
As I know there are some changes going on.
Sure, but before handing it back to the petitioner, just the issues that the staff, both of the fire department and planning division have been working through with the petitioner are exactly how to arrange the interior of the space with respect to the codes and also maximizing the utility of the space for the business. And then mostly on the outside, what we've been working with the petitioner on is effectively creating a plan for drop-off and pickup, working with the landlord to identify, we've brainstormed several options for, with the petitioner on trying to figure out how to, with this shopping center's configuration, effectively have customers with this unique pattern of drop-off and pickup in a location with the one driveway. And it has, as you know, there's a emergency access at the end, which has a small turnaround, but it still requires sort of a three-point turn. So we've been working with the petitioner on that. Both of those items are somewhat up in the air right now. And so we'd like to, we can, to the extent that you'd like to go through those, we can. But other than that, that's the gist of what we're currently sorting out.
So we were caught a little bit flat-footed with the special use, so we're trying to move quickly to address the concerns, but feedback would be very helpful in terms of whether understanding if this is the right space for us, if this space can meet the constraints of the planning department. The concerns I've heard sort of split into two areas. There are code concerns, whether what the plan we're proposing meets the IBC. I'm confident that once our architect connects with the fire department, we'll work through those because we're essentially using the same standards across all of our locations. All of them are IBC compliant. In terms of what we're proposing, it's a 5-classroom location. The overall occupancy we're seeking is 75. I think the fire department trivially comfortable with 50. We're going to be well within 50 the first 2 years, but for such a large space to make sense for us, we have to know we can get to 75. So that's where we're seeking. Otherwise, it's just that space is probably too large for what we want to do, and we probably should have a smaller space. So that's internally. It already has 2 handicap accessible bathrooms. There's a question there on whether we need to build a third, I think. It has 3 points of egress. We started with 2, but we actually created, one of the nice things about the facility is that it has a lot of windows and a lot of doors. So each classroom is very close to a point of egress. In generally, the way our classrooms are structured, sorry, that's the code. On the other side of the question is the traffic flow. That's something I was in, per Andrew's suggestion, we're monitoring traffic between 3:30 and 5:30 exclusively. Our business is focused on evenings and weekends. So generally, our classes start around 3:30, go to 8 on a weekday. On a weekend, about 9 o'clock to 4 or 5, depending on. Again, we're talking about, that's probably where we're going to be 3 or 4 years from now, once this space is fully utilized. In the beginning, we're going to be about 2 or 3 day a week. So in the beginning, you'll see us much less, but that's where we want to get to. In terms of traffic flow, the way we structure our program is that we have classes offset every 10 minutes. Parents will come in, generally pull into a spot, let their kids run out, or walk their kids in if they're younger kids. For larger schools, we have traffic attendants that actually meet them. For this school, it's not that large, so we're not planning around it. So then they'll walk in, the teacher is waiting in the lobby, they'll pick up the kids, the parents go back, if they have a question, they'll ask the office, otherwise they pull into their car and they leave. And we turn that around every 10 minutes. So we have 5 classrooms, so for the space to fill up takes about 50 minutes. So we start at 3:30, 4:20. Our goal is to actually avoid the 4:30 to 5:30 period, because no parent wants to arrive during that period or pick up during that period. It's impossible to get to that location. So we try to start classes a little earlier. The other benefit is that we have a lot of carpooling at the 3:30 to 4:30 range because parents don't want to leave work. So generally we see quite a bit of about 30 to 40% of carpools at those hours. Other things that Andrew has proposed, we've got consent from the owner around, is that we're going to dedicate the 10 spots in front of the location from 3:30 to 5:30 to drop off and pick up. That's generally how it works anyway, but the owner is just going to sign it so that it's clear that those spots are going to be used for drop off and pick up. We're going to take another 3 spots, it's hard to see on the map, but basically past that divide, past the handicap spots to allow a turnaround. We're going to map that out maybe for a second meeting, but basically to allow those parents that aren't pulling into a slot but actually just letting their kids out, to allow them an easy turnaround way. Because right now the best way to do that is to pull in and then pull out again. That doesn't create much congestion. The third point was that street, I think it's Milwaukee at that point, is fairly congested between the hours of 3:30 to 5:30 to begin with. We've done counts of the number of parking spaces there, and our parking spaces aren't changing very much. There's about the owner tells me there's 120 parking spots. I counted 100, or our team counted 100 spots. So I may just not be seeing all of them, but of them, about 20 to 30 spots are utilized on a regular basis. In peak periods, it gets closer to 40 or 50, but there's a tremendous capacity in that lot throughout. So generally, we have less questions around the use of that lot because based on our usage, we need about 15 spots for staff, and then, 5 for staff and 10 for people pulling in and pulling out. The concern is around I think the Milwaukee Avenue. The other suggestion Andrew had was that basically forbidding the left-hand turn between those hours, which the owner has consented as well. So the owner is on board with any changes we can propose that mitigates that. If the commissioner has other proposal, we're very willing to hear them as well. But those are the strategies we've generally employed in locations of similar size. We found them to be pretty effective. The last thing I'll say is that our parents, because we're not a transactional business, so people don't come and go and sort of, we're not tutoring in the sense that people come for a few lessons and they go away and then we have new people. Families stay with us for quite a while. The effect of that is we've been able to shape parking policy pretty well in our other locations. We go over it when they sign up with us, and we basically go after violators to say, this is a space, we're part of a community, and this is sort of how it has to work. You have to pull into a space, you have to obey those laws, or we're not going to be able to utilize this space. And parents have been fairly receptive to that. That's an advantage of just the nature of our business. That's kind of my spiel.
Great, thank you.
Okay?
This is a public hearing,
Yep.
and is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak on this? No. Okay, so we'll go to the commission members. We'll start with Commissioner Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when you said no left-hand turn, were you talking about southbound Milwaukee turning into the plaza? Is that what you meant by no left turn?
The staff suggestion on this is based on the stacking from Dundee north for southbound Milwaukee. So our suggestion was to restrict the left out of the center, not a restriction.
Left out of the center.
Not left in, but left out. The left in gets adequate gaps because the northbound is open, so you
Yeah.
can pull onto the median and turn left in. Pulling left out, though, conflicts with the
Makes
people who are
sense.
taking the left in. So that was the suggestion, is just outside, right as you're leaving, if you can see on the screen, somewhere in this area, there would be a no left turn, 4 to 6 p.m. type of time.
Okay. On the floor plan, you have a room is like large and unlabeled. Do you know what that room is going to be used for at all?
Is that the lobby?
Oh, that whole lobby?
That's just to allow a drop-off, so parents will, if they're coming early, they'll just wait with their kids, and the teacher will come out, pick them up, and take them into the class. We try to prevent parents from coming into the classroom just from a safety perspective, so we ask them to wait in that kind of area.
So you wouldn't be holding any special functions or anything in the lobby, right? Like parties or something like that?
No parties, I guess if we're having like a teacher, like a school meeting, but we can get special permits for that if that's a question.
Okay. I just was curious because it wasn't clear how that area was going to be used, but I think you've kind of answered that, so that's good.
Okay. Overall, there would not be more than 75 people, so if we're using that area, we wouldn't be using the classrooms, if that.
So I'm going to go to the classroom setup with the number of students. I guess in the fire department memo, I guess you're asking for 73 and the fire department's asking for 48. So did you say if you can't get the 73, you feel like you can't put yourself there? It's not going to be economical for you?
Unfortunately not. It's just a larger space, so we're making an investment up front. I'm confident that the fire, that we're within the code, so the fire, there's sort of two sections of the code, as I understand it. I'm not an architect. But there's an offhand sort of 20 square feet per student requirement. And then if you have certain types of egress and certain types of things built in, you can go all the way down to 7. We're not seeking 7, we're seeking 16, which is about our standard, square feet per student, which makes each room accommodate between 11 and 14 kids, 12 and 14. So, and that's less than we typically have, but that's kind of the minimum of what would make sense. Again, I'm fast forwarding to 3 or 4 years from now. That's where we'd like to see this location. Next 2 years, we're not going to have any issue with what the fire department's proposing. We're going to be well within that. But in order to invest, we have a 6-year lease that's conditional on sort of this permitting process. In order for that to work, we have to see that in 6 years, we're going to be able to have that kind of space, or it doesn't make sense to get 2,800 square feet. It's bigger than what we need.
So I guess how do we work that? Are we going to approve this on 48 and if it becomes 73, it comes back to us, or?
This is the issue that I was mentioning at the beginning, where this particular issue of how, and Mr. Antor, if you could explain this after but the interpretation of the criteria in the code for setting the ratio of students per square foot, that is what we're sorting through with the architect right now. So our suggestion is to continue this so that we can finish that discussion. All of this started really once the petitioner had the comments from staff, and that's been only a few days. So we're trying to work together to determine how this particular use can meet the code. And Mr. Antor, if you could give us a brief discussion of that.
In the code for most of your occupancy uses, there are some general guidelines based on square footage, whether it's net or gross square footage. Then there is another provision that, which the gentleman referred to, for an increased occupancy load. And there really was not a lot of information in the original submittal, so we based our comments based on the rule of thumb numbers. However, to get to the increased occupancy load, you still have to comply with certain other provisions, such as aisle space, door width, so on and so forth. We have not seen any of that information as of yet. I would suspect that they have the ability on that section there to increase the occupancy load. What point they'll get to, what the final number is, I don't know until we have the information to review. They also had a couple items. All the doors were not shown originally. Bathroom doors were shown. Don't know if there's an error in the drawing, because it showed them opening into the hallway, had gone out to the site, and actually they enter into the bathroom, so that doesn't become an issue. But mostly it comes down to meeting all the other provisions in what they call Chapter 10 of the Building and Fire Prevention Code relating to exiting, and they can get a increased number over that general rule of thumb.
So I guess the floor plan, like the original one we had seats in it. This one I'm looking at now does not. So I guess you guys will work it out to come up with like a correct potential load in each one of those classrooms that'll be acceptable, correct?
That's the idea. And the revisions, we're talking about something that's been going on today. So we're, both the petitioner and the village staff believe that we need some additional time to come up with that.
Okay. I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you. My questions are basically the same, and until we see a more detailed plan, I guess we can't really move on with this. Question for Mr. Antor, the foyer, the interior foyer door shows it swinging in. Is that?
Again, my comments were not 100% complete because they were not a construction review.
Right.
But you are correct, that door would have to swing in the direction of travel because the proposed tenant space that the petitioner is looking for exceeds 50.
And that foyer doesn't exist right now, right?
No, that is not existing.
Let me just check, see if there's anything else.
I apologize. We're clearly not as prepared for this as we should be. We were caught, we went for a business license. We then understood we needed a special use, and we've been racing to get to this point. I'll say that Andrew, Brooke, and Ron in the fire department have been incredible, and just a turnaround. We've been getting comments back, within a day. We will work very diligently with the fire department to get everything up to code. We can't, safety is as important for us as probably more so. We're entrusted with these kids. So that's an internal question, which we will attack very vigorously over the next week. If the commission has extra, so there's a traffic question which the comment department isn't sort of focusing on, which I think is within your purview of how this space will affect usage externally. If we can get that feedback, at least we can come back. My goal is at least to come back to you with a holistic plan that addresses all your concerns. I understand that we're not quite at the point of getting your approval yet, but I'm hoping that we can get there in short order at least.
And
I have
just
nothing further.
to transition just briefly back into the site plan side of this, what the plan commission I think can provide the feedback on at this point would be the proposals to dedicate drop-off and pickup spaces. I believe the number was 10, and that's generally in this area. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the unit is here on the courtyard. The landlord has agreed to dedicate 10 stalls for drop-off and pickup. The petitioner has indicated that at their maximum capacity, that's the projected number of vehicles that would be dropping off and picking up at any one time. Petitioner has also indicated that they would work with the landlord to create an easier turnaround area. We've had discussions with Public Works Department to determine if we can clarify that this area along Milwaukee is also not a drop-off zone. I don't think the petitioner has any issue with that. It's more just of a, can the village increase the signage in that area? So if the Plan Commission has any particular issues with the drop-off pickup, with the idea of how the loading would work, again, I think that's, in this particular case, the most useful comments for the petitioner leading into the next meeting.
No, I think you've figured out the parking to work for you, so I have no comments on that.
Yeah, I would agree too.
Commissioner Stalin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this your first location in Wheeling?
In Wheeling, yes.
Because we've had a number of other classroom-type training facilities in town, and for some reason you look familiar. So, I think the use is indeed needed, and I look forward to having you in town. However, I have a problem with that particular location. That's our newest shopping center development in town, and personally, I think it's really oriented towards a retail type use. That's what it was created for, and your establishment is more of an educational type use. So I'm not really comfortable with the special use at that particular location. I think there's a number of other locations in town, that might meet your immediate needs a little bit better, parking more available, the ability to traverse the drop-off things might be better. I think that location just has a number of challenges that, I think that particular location may not be suited for this special use. I think too that it would tend to change the character of that shopping center a little bit. It is a retail establishment, and now it's going to, something else, a lot of children being dropped off and whatever. So I'd encourage you to look for some other more convenient, better to traverse place in town, and I'm sure we have a bunch of them that you could pick from, but I just don't think that is the best use of that space, and that it would be the best place for you. I'm sorry, that's my own personal opinion, so.
We looked for about 6 months. We found a place in Buffalo Grove before we found this location. I think mostly our parents and our director pushed me towards this location. If there's anything we can do to address the concerns, I'll welcome that as well. Or if you have suggestions for where we'll look, we'll open to that as well. I'll tell you why we liked this location for us. We've generally seen that we draw from a certain segment of parents, and I think those parents will have a positive impact actually on that plaza as well. I think that's one of the reasons the owner of the plaza is excited for our business to be there as well. It's a less utilized plaza right now, and I think that with the traffic that we create, it'll actually see more utilization and different types of businesses perhaps drawn there. That's what we've seen in other shopping plazas we've opened in, where we haven't opened in sort of standalone locations. The other aspect of that plaza that we liked, the only thing it didn't have was sort of the turnaround, that for some reason at the end of it, where generally you would expect an exit, it sort of ends. That was the only downside. Everything else fit us well. There's a large amount of parking, more so if you count in other shopping plazas, if you actually divide it by all the occupants of that plaza, and you look at the times we're working, there'd be less spaces available for us than there are. We went through and we counted spaces for Monday through Sunday, and we looked at during the hours we're operational how many spaces would actually be available, and we found on the order of a minimum of 30 spaces available all the time, and often quite more. So it'd be convenient for parents. And the other was just location. We see that parents love that location. It works well. We would likely move along Milwaukee or Dundee if we were to move, sort of in one of the areas. But just to is there anything we can do to address these concerns, or is it just overall plaza concerns?
Well, I think we were very disappointed too when the center was built that there was only one egress and entrance, that end point would be perfect for creating a loop type, but, there's nothing that can be done. That's the way it is. So, I think you have to live within those constraints, and you've got the challenge of dealing with it. But again, I just, in my personal opinion, it's a brand new shopping center. It will grow over time. You can't expect immediate success. And I just think that, there are other places in town that your use would be better served. It might be more convenient and get around some of the problems that you have. So that's my only concern, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Commissioner Vito?
Yeah, I think just from listening to everything, it might be a little premature and maybe come back with addressing the concerns. So I don't want to grill you on anything until you kind of have it all together, addressing what Andrew and the people from the fire department have said. So I'll leave it at that.
I'm confident we'll address that. I don't know if there's much we can do to address the turnaround question. That's a decision for this board to say if this is the right location for us. We're confident it is, and we're confident we can work within those constraints, but it's your city. Anything else?
No, that's it.
The plans that Andrew and Brooke came up with seem like viable and workable. A couple of concerns I have is future businesses, but then again, we can't really bank on anything going into there until we know what's going to go in there, so we can work with this. But any type of turnaround, would those lines be blocked out, or would that parking be left there and they would just be designated? How would that work? Then you're taking away actual spots from the parking.
Yeah, I think what we need to be able to evaluate a plan on that one. The staff had looked at the possibility of converting an in space. We felt that might ease the turnaround without reducing the number of spaces much. Based on the description, I'm not entirely sure how the turnaround in the middle would work. So we would have to see it, take a look at it. What is the radius of that turn? If it's not worthwhile as a turnaround, you would leave it as a space and basically extend the number of dedicated spaces for drop-off and pickup, basically. Yeah, that'd be my
We can do that as well.
solution for that.
Okay. So you've got that work. My actual concern and you touched on it, Mr. Jennings, is somebody dropping someone off on Milwaukee Avenue in between those two buildings. It's a very busy street. I can't imagine anybody doing it, but I'm certain somebody's going to attempt to do it. And I really have a concern with that. Parents will try to drop off their children as quickly as they can to keep moving. And I have a concern, so I would like to see how we're going to address that. And I know, you indicated that you go through and you have instructions before they even start their classes.
Mm-hmm.
But how many times do they not heed those and try it once, and there's an accident? All you need is once. So I have a concern, I do have a concern with that I would like to see something addressed there.
And just to briefly address that, we have contacted both our Public Works Department and the state of Illinois. This is a state route. The Village of Wheeling does not have the authority to add signage to this stretch of road without first getting approval from the state. So we're checking into that. That is an item that, assuming this is to be continued, we should have a response from the state. I would think that at minimum, we should be able to establish signage that clarifies that there is no stopping along Milwaukee Avenue. We do have a fire hydrant directly in this area. So there's a fire hydrant right here. So we may be able to, between the two of the fire hydrant and there's a light pole, there are existing features in that area, we may be able to work with the state.
Well,
on
hopefully
that.
that can be, I would like to see that addressed before it comes back to us. Commissioner Stylen, you had a comment?
Yeah, I think, Andrew, did you show another interior that showed an exit out onto Dundee Road?
Yes.
I mean Milwaukee.
Milwaukee,
Excuse me, Milwaukee Road?
be a long stretch.
Yes, I believe the idea, again, this is the floor plan that we've been working on today. I believe the idea of this one is an exit, is that correct? This is an emergency exit?
It's an emergency.
Yeah, that's an existing exit that was there from the original tenants in the building. There were 4 original exits from that tenant space, because I believe it was originally designed as 3 separate tenant spaces, one of them being larger with 3 smaller tenant spaces.
I guess I have a little concern. I mean, it is an emergency exit, but if something were to happen and the 75 kids had to evacuate from that exit, you've got a major highway right outside the door, and that bothers me a little bit. If you could find an exit exiting somewhere else that had a little bit larger space, or I'd like to have a good understanding of how far it is from the street to that door in case kids are running out. I don't want them running into the street. Again, that'd be my only concern, Mr. Chairman.
Look into it.
Any other comments? So, sir, you've heard a number of comments. And I know you're working with Andrew and Brooke and Mr. Antor. So I would like to make a motion now to continue to a date certain. What do we?
Have you had discussions with your architect about the amount of time that you anticipate?
We had, but we're going to have to switch to our, the architect was concerned about the special use process. It's going to, there are problems, but it's going to extend our price tag quite a bit. So we got caught up in a few of those discussions.
What I would suggest would be the August 14th meeting.
August 14th.
That gives you ample time for a couple of rounds of review.
Okay.
It gives you time to check in with the architect, work out whatever contract you have with them.
Yep.
You have, I believe, 2 architects actually, so between the 2 of them, Mr. Antor, myself, it gives us all time to analyze what you're giving us. It gives you time to talk to the landlord. Our deadline for our packet would be August 7th, so whatever we get out to the Plan Commission, we would need to have in hand, fully packaged by August 7th. So you have.
That seems realistic. What does the timeline look forward after that meeting?
After that
If
meeting,
those things go well?
the Plan Commission will make, assuming you've addressed to their satisfaction, Plan Commission will make a recommendation to the village board. Village board will then make a final determination. So by the end of August, you would have a final determination on this location.
And hopefully we can sit down with the fire department prior to that and get a sense of whether their concerns are addressed.
Absolutely. I would probably put them on the workshop meeting at the end of August.
And we are recommending board to the village. Our vote is not the final vote.
I understand.
Okay. However this votes, goes to the board recommending it, and they have the final say. So we have a motion to continue. There a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
There a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Motion by Commissioner Powers, second by Commissioner Johnson. Mr. Secretary?
Commissioner Powers?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson, I say yes. Commissioner Stylen?
Yes.
Commissioner Vito?
Yes.
And Chairman Mufado?
Yes.
And we have 2 absent.
Yes.
Thank you.
We'll see you on the 14th. Do we have to sign anything?
Writing out.
All right, do I submit the affidavit of compliance? Or do I do that?
You can leave that with Ms. Jones. Just printing one, you can hand him. I don't think we need to sign it.
You don't
I'm just printing one for him to take with him.
I forgot to ask him. What is recreation?
have some comments to give you.
Oh, okay.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right, Ron.
Ready to call the next docket?
All right.
Calling docket number SCBA 14-19, Deca Restaurant, 401 East Dundee Road, appearance approval of a freestanding sign. Mr. Jennings?
Thank you. This business was in front of the Plan Commission, I would say in the end of last year. Following that review, it was subsequently approved by the village board, and then more recently was approved for a facade improvement grant. During the review by the village board and the facade grant review, there were some modifications made at the request of the village board, specifically to the paver bricks. The petitioner continued to refine the plans, and during the plan submittal, the petitioner added landscaping, to the area, sort of a mirror image to the sign landscape plan. At this time, you have in front of you the sign landscape plan, which has been updated to meet the code, the sign plan itself, and the landscaping area directly opposite the sign area. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to the petitioner.
If you could describe the two landscape areas, the sign landscape area. I know you've added more there, and then you've enhanced that area, and then you've added the landscape area, which we didn't see when we approved it. So we'd like to go over it so we can all hear what you're doing there. Thank you. If you can give your name and business address.
Alex Vaisman. Vaysman. 401 East Dundee. Actually, it's a dual address. It's 401 and 411. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you for your time this evening. When we submitted our drawings initially, we submitted these diagrams. I brought copies of them. These diagrams show what the intent was. And Andrew and I were talking, and the issue became, well, what is this? These are nice pictures, but what are you actually planting? So, which I completely understand when it comes time for the facade grant, how do you compare? What we have done is we had a landscape architect put together a plan to show what this is, essentially, what you have already approved. The next issue became signage. There's a signage ordinance, I believe, that requires a certain amount of landscaping of a certain kind. When Andrew reviewed it without Brooke, I'm not sure, he determined that we're a little bit short of certain types of landscaping that's required for the sign. And what we did was we tried to address that with the landscape architect to increase landscaping primarily for the signage to be approved. We are perfectly fine with landscaping around the sign as it is now. We just want to change the sign, obviously. Can't have a Deca restaurant with Eduardo's sign. So this is a result. So primarily this drawing was a result of that, to kind of increase perennials mostly. We don't have any, and the code requires a certain percentage, so we've addressed that, I believe. And we also, since we were doing that, we decided to, well, why not go ahead and do the whole landscaping, so we have a comprehensive landscape plan. This plan is, aside from the landscaping around the sign, it is, no, in my belief, in my estimate, financial estimate, it is no different from the plan that we originally showed that was approved. It's just more documented this way. Hopefully that explains what's...
Sure. We'll start with Commissioner Steilen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. this is interesting because when I first opened the docket, it was sign and landscaping plan, and then I looked at the landscaping plan and figured, well, how do you even judge what the area around the sign is? You've provided landscaping everywhere. And not only that, you've provided all the different kinds of varieties and stuff that we asked for everywhere, that I would think goes beyond the area required by the sign, and I can't even tell from this drawing where the sign square footage would need to be, and I don't care, because I think this is absolutely wonderful. This is the kind of landscaping and variety that I think will be perfect. It will just be great. I can't wait till you do it. So I thank you very much. You've really impressed me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. Yeah, I concur. It's a great landscaping plan, a lot of good detail. The sign itself, that's going to be black because in our packet, it looked gray.
Well, yeah, we were toying with different shades. We wanted to do black. We experimented with different ways it would be lit at night. And our whole image is sort of a very classical restaurant. It's a upscale, essentially French food with a Russian twist. And we want it to be as classical, as minimal as possible. With, the sign is not minimal, it's got all of these bells and whistles I get. But we did not want to introduce any color into the sign except for just the white and black.
No, it looks very classy. To me, it's a little hard to read as you're driving by.
There's I'm just looking at the packet. Sorry, I'm not in front of the microphone. I'm looking at the packet. There's an error in the file. The file that we have is not what I'm seeing on your iPads. I don't know if there was some sort of packaging glitch in the software, but the same file that we have does not look, the appearance is not correct. It's a black background with white letters, correct?
Yeah, it's actually it's the letters. Yeah, they're white because there's no black there. It's not actual white letters. They just cut out. Does it make sense?
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The absence of black is what gives it that white. Yeah. I'm not sure if that matters.
So it is black.
Is it
Okay,
black?
if we can just make sure we note that somewhere, because if this somehow happens to get.
It is in the text of
Right.
the docket.
I know.
But when I saw it,
Right.
is it black or gray? Doesn't look bad as gray either. So.
The horizontal lines are also, our version of it looks pretty much identical to what you see on the screen right now.
Okay.
Is the address somewhere, obviously it's not visible on the sign here, is it the address of the restaurant visible somewhere?
Yeah, it's a standard code required lettering that will be on the front door that is there now. It's such a unique location, even though it's a plaza, but it almost feels like a separate,
Right.
like a offshoot. So it's visibility-wise, it's impossible to think that that's not where the restaurant is. So we're not worried about this, if it's, we're not worried about 401, particularly when people are, searching where is the restaurant, but, fire department required and other code required signage will be on the front door, like any other front door, with the address number.
Do we require it on the sign?
It's not required on the sign unless it is not clearly visible on the street. In this case, it is fairly visible. We can double check, but the previous door There are now 2 units, so I think it'll just need to be added to the deli door, actually. The Eduardo's door area did have a numbering.
Okay, that's all I have.
Is that
Thanks.
still there? It hasn't been.
It's still there.
Commissioner Powers.
Thanks. This landscape plan we have in front of us, are there shrubs and stuff that already exist over there that are on this plan?
Yes.
Okay, is that site currently irrigated at all?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
And even the little piece on the side here, on the other side of the walk?
Yeah, I can tell you how it's irrigated.
Somebody goes out
I
to the
met
house?
I met the guy.
Okay,
It's the landlord has a contract with a company that keeps the grounds.
okay.
In fact, if you care, once we build this will be the property of the landlord for upkeeping. So they will be maintaining this.
Yeah, this is a great plan, a lot of detail, a lot of work went into it, and I'm kind of excited to see what it's going to look like too, so thank you very much.
Commissioner Vito.
Yeah, just to echo what everybody else has said, I think it looks sharp, and I think you've complied with everything that needs to be complied with in a freestanding sign like that.
Okay. Anything else, sir? No? That's it. I too like it, we needed to, I know this is much more than, we don't need to designate what is being added.
No, we'll have it on the file. We'll make a copy of this to go along with the building permit drawings.
Okay,
It
great.
is beyond what was approved with the special use in terms of its detail.
Yes,
And
yeah,
we
it's
can
very
just-
nice.
We can just insert it.
Okay, great. When do you anticipate opening?
Gosh, I wish you didn't answer that.
Well, you don't have to, it's not part of the.
We were supposed to be already open. We anticipate opening hopefully middle to end of August.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
And just as a comment also, first of all, thank you and the village for helping us with this landscaping because of the facade grant. That's part of the reason why we need to do as much as we, maximize every dollar that you guys are giving us, and then from our end too, we want to be sort of an equal partner in that. Also, it's going to be easier for Andrew or whoever comes to verify what was built, because when you will be verifying what was done for the facade grant, this landscaping has already been approved. So we can't not do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I know.
It's,
Right, exactly.
And then the sign, the landscaping around the sign, that is part of the signage. And I agree with you, it's hard to say what is required, what is not. In this case, all is actually required as far as we're concerned because of the grant.
Okay, excellent. So any other questions, comments? No? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Powers, second by Commissioner Stylin. Mr. Secretary?
Commissioner Powers?
Yes.
Commissioner Stylin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson, I vote yes. Commissioner Vito?
Yes.
And Chairman Rafato?
Yes.
5 yes, 2 absent.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you, Commissioners. What about the sign for Sturm's Deli?
It was approved.
That was approved.
Thank you very much for your time.
Fabricated. There's no issue with the fabrication. You can,
We have an issue.
no issue with the village. You're
Oh,
allowed
thank you
to
very
fab-
much. We
you're
have an
allowed-
issue.
You're allowed
But
to
thank you. Thank you very much.
Andrew, can we use this particular item as an example in our future landscaping plan, what we'd like to see documentation?
Sure.
I think this is a real nice
This is a keeper.
example.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do we have to sign that? No. Item number 8, approval of minutes. We don't have any
We didn't have to.
other business. Mr. Jennings?
Thank you. You know what, I'll probably just run to the podium so I can
Sure.
look at you.
You don't have to run, though.
I'll walk.
You can walk quickly.
Last week, the staff began a process of going through some of the next priority items for the Plan Commission. We have this week just a short update. We'll get a little feedback, but just a short update on where we are. The items that we have for tonight are an extension of last week's street light discussion, as well as an update on the landscaping code and the landscape RFP. This is just a repeat from last week. We've received survey responses. Don't try to read this, it's too small. But we've received responses from probably a good 10 to 15 municipalities through the Northwest Municipal Conference. It's one of the nice things that their staff does. They distribute surveys on behalf of municipalities. You can get feedback from the other towns as to any variety of topics that you have an interest in. We asked in this case, if your municipality has installed decorative streetlights, is there a single design or are there multiple types? We asked, is the use of the streetlights limited to a specific area or throughout the community? Is the light used on county or state roads? If so, was an agreement required? And just some information on the funding source. So from all of this, we tried to distill that down to what's most relevant to the Village of Wheeling. As of right now, just a couple of highlights. These are the blue items here. These are towns that responded with some level of information that we thought was most useful. They have a geographic and physical configuration that's similar enough to the planned Wheeling area. So the Deerfield, some of the notes here that they have a decorative light pole in the village center area. They use it along Waukegan Road, needing state approval for that. They believe some amount of TIF funds were used for the streetscape improvements. They have pavers, street furniture, trash cans, decorative bike racks, benches, etc., as well as the light poles. So just one more example we can look at. Mount Prospect also had good feedback. They have lights, both a decorative lower light and then a matching finish on the higher street lights. So there's really two things going on in most of these communities. You have pedestrian lights that are concentrated right in the core of the walkable town center area. And then some of them also have where that decorative walkable area either overlaps with or abuts a more highway style street. They may have added a upgraded highway style fixture in that area. So what we're looking at then also in this is, and this is what we're setting up for the next workshop really is, in terms of the program, are we talking about a large area, small area? Are we, I believe we're limiting it mostly to the idea of a pedestrian-oriented light, and then trying to figure out funding source, what will this cost based on a projected spacing, and then the style itself. So we have a handful of things that we're trying to figure out. What is the trigger for this? Is it development-based? Or would it be a village installation program regardless of how the development works out? So just some of the other observations that we had. The other piece of this that we saw was the lights are not frequently installed in locations that have overhead wires. That is a topic of discussion that we've had off and on here in the Village of Wheeling for some time, is how to trigger burial. Is it something that can be undertaken by the village, and if so, how would we go about doing it? There were a few locations that did have that, but not very many. A lot of them, the decorative lights, are in areas that have buried power lines. It goes kind of hand in hand with the pedestrian-oriented town center areas. They frequently bury the power lines when those types of developments occur. We did observe some locations that had just a large number of types of poles. I think this is sort of what the village is trying to avoid by planning in advance. You've got public poles of 3 different styles here, 1, 2, 3. You've got private poles of a different style, and in this case, you get a bonus cell tower out of it. But the village, I think, is trying to avoid some of that, some of the clutter, and come with something more like a uniform program. This was the Mount Prospect example we had last week that has both a pedestrian style light, and this is a location where they have a highway, Northwest Highway with the train tracks on the other side of the street, and they've selected a slightly upgraded highway style fixture to pair up with these. Uptown Park Ridge has a similar combination of street lights and pedestrian lights. The Mount Prospect on the perimeter of their town center area, we came up with this, which I think also is, Mount Prospect has the example of maybe a good target. They also have an example, I think, of not perhaps the best use of money. No offense to Mount Prospect, but having the pedestrian light and the overhead wires and the highway light on the perimeter, I don't know if they're achieving the desired result in something like this. So just something to think about for us in terms of the triggers for development. If you select a light, make a recommendation to the board for a pedestrian light, the trigger and the locations should also be part of that recommendation in terms of keeping it to a compact area. That may be the end of what we have on the streetlights for today. So our plan for the next workshop on the pedestrian lights is to work with a couple of different style options to see what's out there. We have a catalog, which I can sync for you. I did include it in the materials that I brought tonight, just as an example. Manufacturers have catalogs of projects that they've completed. As I said last week, a lot of times these end up being named after the town where they first designed it, but then other towns will reuse that same mold. So I can place this in your sync folder so you can flip through these. Some of the towns that we've just looked at are in this catalog. You'll see a variety of things. Some of them are very specific to the region. You get a more of a maritime feel, a prairie feel. Some of them are classic. You get sort of the classic almost urban style. There are just a number of ways to do this. So I can put that in your sync folder. So I think we're kind of narrowing it down to a handful of items for recommendation. Again, that would be style. What is the geographic spread? Is there any desire to also look at the highway style light? My understanding is no, not yet. But style, location, spread, the trigger, and then cost. Go ahead.
Did I just hear you say that we're not looking towards highway style?
The understanding that I had from the board on this was that the immediate concern was more of the pedestrian level light, having a design guideline for pedestrian level lighting.
Can we assume that we will have our normal, I'll call it Milwaukee Avenue street lighting installed down Dundee, possibly where we would be working with this decorative lighting?
I think that's a good question for, the dialogue as to how to actually implement something like this can include a initial recommendation and some requests for additional feedback, and I think that's a valid question.
Are there any, I know for street lighting, there's illumination levels and consistency levels and all that kind of stuff you have to do for the street lighting. Is there anything similar for pedestrian lighting, could we use the same pole that we would use for traffic? Is that what you call it? The normal street lighting, our normal street lighting, can we upscale something on that pole to be of a decorative nature that might meet the illuminant standards, whatever? I assume that would be a lot cheaper than putting in new poles every other pole or something like that.
As far as I know, the illumination standard is going to be, is related to visibility on the street. So the village has a standard for our residential streets. IDOT has a standard for the IDOT streets that come through. And you have to meet the photometric requirements for that standard. If you add a pedestrian level light where it isn't required, I believe that you can add it in between. If you wanted to go in between two existing poles with a pedestrian light to tie it into another pedestrian-oriented area, I don't think that you have a standard that you have to meet. Then if you added that same pedestrian head to an existing pole, I don't see any reason why you couldn't, to cut down on the number of poles to avoid having 1,000 poles down the middle of town.
But, I just think it might be cheaper if we could find something that could do double duty. You could put it on a standalone pole if you needed, or you could mount it somehow to our existing standard poles. So, then it'd probably have to be the same color of our existing pole, otherwise it'd look.
Sure.
And everything I see seems to be a new standard standalone fixture.
Many of these there are, I suppose it's possible to place a light. Some of these do have arm options and not just a single pole. There's the lights that are installed in Arlington Heights have a standalone pole option and a option where it's attached to a higher level street light. Now that could have been by design from the very beginning. I assume in that case it probably was, but it's possible that we could find something that might have a more, 3 or 4 different mounting options, one of which could be
Because
attaching
then it would seem like if the town center area grows, it would be a lot more convenient to add a fixture to the next pole or something like that, rather than having to plant new poles. But, that's just cost-effective.
In some of the locations that we're talking about, we do not have poles.
Right.
We are planning poles
Right.
in the near future in this area. We don't currently have them. I believe those are the square, is the pole on Milwaukee Avenue is the square one, I believe.
Yeah.
So I believe that's the
Weren't they
light.
continuing with what Buffalo Grove had?
Yes.
Just coming down Dundee?
It's the village and Buffalo Grove have an agreement on Lake Cook Road to do essentially the Milwaukee Avenue style.
They're using our poles
poles.
rather than their poles.
And I believe that's what we're doing here as well. It's a fairly similar.
I just think that something like that, if we can make use of what I hope to have existing poles out here to be able to mount them to, that it would be a lot cheaper and therefore, a greater chance of getting it done.
I don't have the table open, but one of the other options for this is if you have a standard pole. We do have some standards right now in the code that dictate if you do a subdivision, you have to use this pole and you have to space it out at this interval. You can adopt that standard. You can adopt that again and have 2 standards. In the town center area, you shall install the decorative town center pole. Schaumburg has something kind of similar to that, where there's more than one pole option based on where you are, and you dictate through the code that in this area, this is the pole. And so then the development, the new development would then be responsible for installing the poles within the new development. So with that, what I'd like to do is place this in your sync. Are there any other questions on this one for the time being?
Any questions?
No, nice job.
So what
Yeah,
we'll,
one,
Sure.
and it's just specific to this area here. With the new poles that they're putting in, are they moving the existing lights? Or is this going to suddenly be very dark along here?
you mean before, will those lights go down before the new lights are up?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, is ComEd moving the light
I don't
fixtures
know.
over?
I'm not very involved in that project. I'll see if we can figure out. My understanding is that those were new, that we're looking at new poles installed in, I believe within the next year. But I don't know, your question of timing, I don't know. I can.
Yeah, I don't know if ComEd would temporarily move them over, because there's not much else out there.
Great. So you'll have this at our next workshop session.
What I'd like to do is try to start refining this a little bit more. Right now, it's just a lot of pretty pictures. What
And
I'd like to do is.
timing prevents anything for next week?
At this point, yes. I don't see it,
Well, I like that we're working on what's coming up next. We have those in place, August, September. We just have to look now out, what's going to be coming up next after this. So we'll have to discuss that.
and I'd like to try to frame these questions,
Sure.
questions
No, understood.
for the Plan Commission recommendation. Here are the 4 or 5 topics that we're trying to get a consensus on. And then,
Yep.
aside from that, are there any other questions or direction that the commission would like? Perhaps this recommendation goes in 2 stages. You go and present something to the board. Here's our preliminary concept. Look for some feedback, and then go back.
Yeah, that might be helpful, as
You don't want to go too
come
far.
to know that we sometimes do have varying ideas on things. Okay, great.
And then the other item. Where is I just close it. I closed it. The other item that we had sent a survey out to the other municipalities was the landscaping. This is preliminary. I just wanted to, since we had gotten the survey back, I wanted to give you an update on it. The different municipalities, I think this gives us some good items to follow up on. Some of them did specifically note that they used an outside consultant to rewrite their landscape code. So whereas we had received 0 responses on our RFP, we can call these towns now and say, who did you use? How did you find them? Who else submitted a proposal for you? So that we can start making sure that we're reaching out to the right folks on this. I think that's really the thing that's stalling us right now. So I highlighted a couple here who've said that they work with a consultant. The other things on here I think are of interest for us as we move forward. Very few of these municipalities identified that their landscape requirements differ in different areas. A couple of them did, but for the most part, they have a landscape requirement. It varies a little bit if it's a residential or a commercial development, but only a couple of them identified a location-based requirement. So those who did, maybe we can look at that if that's something that we're considering in our code revision. The other items I think that were of interest beyond that were the triggers. What triggers the requirement for a review? It was kind of all over the place, but some of the same themes that you see here. Major review, minor review, et cetera, et cetera. They had similar things. This was interesting. The Schaumburg requirement, there's a landscape upgrade required from the street to the facade that's being modified. So that if you modify the one side, you're responsible for landscaping that same side. What you don't really get out of this, which I will also try to see if I can put in your sync folder, is Lincolnshire has an interesting model, I think. For their landscape code. It's not terribly long, but it does have some interesting concepts in it. They have, the way that it's written, and it'll be probably more useful to have it in front of you for this, but the way that it's written, they have some basic requirements, and then they've got a section that says, if it's not one of these 4 things, here's what you have to do. So they go through and say, you know, if it's this, here's your set of requirements. If it's this, and then what's left over, you're required to do natural prairie planting. And they tell you in a table, natural prairie planting is the following. So what's left over has to be natural, sustainable. Just an interesting concept if we're looking at making a change. That may be something to consider. That type of basic, it doesn't take long to set up their requirements. Whether or not you specify natural prairie is one thing, but the idea of having a very easy to follow set of regulations. So I'll put that in your sync folder as well. Were there any other notes that you remember from these? Anything else that stood out? So we'll start contacting some of the municipalities who use consultants to do their landscape code overhauls. We'll try to get you some of the things that seem nice out of these other, Commissioner Zangara is not here, but he gave us, I want to say Libertyville, and had some things that might be useful. If you do get a consultant for this, we can hand them and say, we like this from Libertyville, we like this from Lincolnshire. And then for Wheeling, here are some of the ideas that we have that nobody's done yet, and try to get some help on it. Anything on the landscape requirement at this point?
Anybody? Nope. Are you going to put this in our sync folder?
So things to sync. So far, I've got the surveys, streetlights.
Streetlights.
Catalog.
Both
Yeah.
surveys, the catalog. I've got the Lincolnshire landscape code. And then I think we'll regroup in August on this, on both of these. And we also have the building material question. We haven't made any progress on that one in the last week, but sometime in August, we will intend to have some updates and redirections on these.
Great.
Yes.
Andrew, I think a while back you said that you had submitted a plan to the Northwest Municipal, somebody for the streetlight plan for Dundee Road. Any chance that we could get a schematic of what you proposed? I don't know, did you have distances in mind or any locations
What I
like that?
submitted to the Northwest Municipal Conference. I have, the village submitted the plan for Lake Cook Road to.
Oh, not for Dundee Road?
It was the Lake Cook, so the village in Buffalo Grove hired a consultant jointly. When the county, Cook County Highway Department informed us that there was, we were on our own for paying for the lighting and designing it, et cetera, Buffalo Grove and Wheeling got together, hired a consultant, and sought a grant through the Northwest Municipal Conference to help fund it. So that may be.
Oh, I thought we also were looking for a grant for Dundee as well.
We do have that as well. That's, both are approved.
But did you submit a plan for Dundee
I
that might
didn't.
show any details?
I didn't. I can find out if we have that
Yeah,
handy.
if there were, maybe even the plan for Lake Cook Road and Dundee, if there is some kind of a schematic, might be interesting to have in our documentation bag.
The Lake Cook Road materials do include a light fixture, so I can at least find that one. I've seen that one. I'll see if we can get our hands on the Dundee Road.
Any other questions, comments for Andrew? Thank you, Andrew. Brooke, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Going to other business, Commissioner Stylen.
I don't have anything this evening.
Commissioner Stylen. No. Commissioner Johnson.
I have nothing.
Commissioner Vito.
Nothing other than that, the Lincolnshire landscape ordinance looks interesting. I'd like to see it. That's it.
Commissioner Powers.
Welcome, Commissioner Vito. I was not here last time.
That's right.
Thank you.
Sorry, I wasn't here either. I have two things. I was at the Weston on Monday, and they had a big tent up on the south side of the building. Huge tent. As a matter of fact, they took out all of the parking on that side. And I would have thought that something that large would have been a special use for something. I found it amazing. The thing I found amazing is that it took out all of that parking. They had it all blocked off. I forgot to tell you about that. Bless you.
It is not unusual for the village to issue tent permits as a building permit, a temporary building permit. It's entirely possible that they had something like that. I don't know that, but we do issue permits. They're kind of reviewed on a case-by-case basis. If there's a convention, if somebody has a particular annual sale event. So I'd have to look into it to find out what it was.
But, and I understand that, but to take out all of that parking, and parking there is at a premium as it is, just seemed odd that that would happen. And then in the same area, the Prairie Crossing sign, what do they call those signs? Multi-tenant signs? That's in pretty bad shape. Not on, missing panels. And not very up to date, by the way. It just, those two things struck me as being odd. You know, everything else over there is really kept up, but the tent really struck me as being odd, so. Anyway, that's all I had. Do I hear a motion to close?
Just a second. Andrew, that, yeah, the reader board sign at Phillips 66 is missing now again? Did something happen there?
Not that I know of.
They added it, and I asked you about it, and now it's gone.
Now gone?
Yeah.
Totally, it's not turned on. It is no
No,
longer
it
there.
is not attached anymore. It was just hanging underneath their, regular gas price portion of the sign, and now it's not there.
We'll take a look.
Thank you.
Motion to close?
So, second.
All those in favor, voice vote?
Aye.
Adjourned.